Come one, come all, and listen to a tale. When our heroes arrived in Hope's Landing, they received a frosty welcome from the inhabitants. Most of the townsfolk are scared of the Hydra gang currently plaguing the town, and Boondock set out to investigate. As the party set out, they heard a gunshot in the distance, revealing Reverend Salt, smiling at Boondock as his bodyguard held a smoking coach gun over a dead body. Boondock, enraged, pulls out their guntar as the bodyguard smiles and levels his coach gun towards Boondock. The bodyguard is quicker on the draw, and Boondock braces for a hit, but it never comes. The bodyguard has a bullet clean through their head, and as the party looks behind them, Ma Boondock is standing there with a rifle, demanding that Reverend Salt explain himself. Reverend Salt explains that the man his bodyguard just shot was a member of the Hydra gang, and that he was just doing Boondock's job for them since they decided to skip town. Boondock interrogates the Reverend as the party tries to investigate the body. As they look, the arm of the body was blown off, making it impossible for the party to figure out if the body had a snake tattoo that all Hydra members have. Essen notes that may have been intentional, but there isn't any proof for this. As Juliet looks over the body, still tipsy, she notes that the person shot was the same man she attempted to flirt with in the bar, and she also remembers that he didn't have the Hydra tattoo. While Juliet's testimony wasn't the most trustworthy, Boondock's eagerness to bring down one of the two men plaguing their town caused them to arrest Reverend Salt. However, Boondock would still need to find concrete evidence that Reverend Salt committed a crime. Otherwise, they would have to let Reverend Salt go free by sunrise. After the party placed Reverend Salt in jail, Essen could hear a voice in his mind. The voice felt the injustice that this man had committed while in town and wanted to execute Reverend Salt here and now. Worried that the party would let Reverend Salt go free if they were unable to find evidence. The voice then told Essen that he had until sundown to let him kill Reverend Salt, telling Essen he was owed for saving Essen from the fire elemental. Nervously, Essen then told the party his secret. Essen, because of an incident in his past, was now fused with a Kirin, a celestial godlike being. Essen couldn't quite control the powers given to him by this event, and occasionally, the Kirin could take over Essen's body for his own purposes. Essen then tried to explain to Boondock what the Kirin needed to do. But Boondock explained that, according to the law of Hope's Landing, there had to be a trial to prove Reverend Salt's guilt. The first lead the party had was to investigate the Church of the All-Mother, the church that Reverend Salt led. And as the party searched, they found out that Reverend Salt had been giving food to anyone who attended his sermons. In a town like Hope's Landing, where food is scarce and expensive, most townsfolk were eager to listen and were easily swayed to trust Reverend Salt. But, to the party's frustration, searching around the rooms yielded nothing to prove the Reverend's guilt. As Juliet searched, Hops tugged on Juliet's skirt, telling Juliet of how she needed to wet herself in a body of water or she would dry out. In the corner of the church was a baptismal pool, and Juliet had the bright idea to baptize Hops. As Juliet dipped Hops in the water, Essen decided to read out a passage from a holy book that was lying around. Juliet then lifted a newly reborn Hops out of the water, and the party could hear an angelic chord. For a second, the party was frozen in surprise, uncertain of what they just did. But as they looked around the room, the chord was just Morgan, who accidentally leaned on the organ. Realizing the absurdity of the situation, Essen began to laugh. Clearly, one of the first times he's laughed like this in a long time. The adventurers then decide to head to the mines Reverend Salt's brother, Mr. Salt, owns to get clues on Reverend Salt and get information on the Oracle. As they enter, they see a receptionist at the front desk and explain that they need to see Mr. Salt to tell him the news about his brother. A few seconds after she leaves, Juliet decides to rummage through the secretary's desk and finds a steamy romance book, which she decides to keep for herself. As the secretary returns, she explains that Mr. Salt is far too busy to meet with them in person right now, but hands the party a sending stone to communicate with him. Juliet then takes this opportunity of the receptionist being distracted to sneak past 3 guards and head into Mr. Salt's office by picking the lock. As she does, she tries to crawl in without being noticed. But Mr. Salt, having his desk facing the door, sees her trying to crawl in. Mr. Salt then alerts Boondock to arrest this strange woman who broke into his office. Boondock sighs and comes in to arrest Juliet, as Juliet pretends to not know who Boondock is. Boondock then explains that they are looking for the Oracle, and Mr. Salt, grateful for Boondock arresting Juliet, agrees to give the party the locator for the Oracle in a few days. As Boondock then explains that Reverend Salt has been arrested, Mr. Salt looks sad, but tells Boondock that if he has the proof, then his brother should get what's coming to him. Upon leaving, Juliet manages to steal the nearest object off Mr. Salt's desk, and once outside, Juliet proudly produces a calendar. All the calendar has that's noteworthy is a single red circle for the next day, noting it as a big day. Boondock sighs, takes the stolen item back, and returns it to Mr. Salt, much to Juliet's dismay. As the group heads back to Hope's Landing with no concrete evidence on Reverend Salt's guilt, the Kieran is done trying to be civil and waiting to kill the guilty Reverend Salt. Essen tries to reason with Boondock, trying to tell them that the Kieran won't listen, and Boondock asks to speak to the Kieran directly. Reluctantly, Essen lets his control slip, as he turns into a large, draconic creature, golden with horse-like features. He is adorned with a single beautiful horn and a mane of silver hair. Boondock, unflinching, explains to this newly revealed god that there must be a trial set in place before Reverend Salt can be pronounced guilty. With an incredibly strong will, Boondock doesn't flinch at the domineering presence of the Kieran becoming more agitated. Tensions are high as Hops sneaks away from the rest of the party, who are cowering indoors. Hops then tries to bless the Kieran by licking him, sending the Kieran into a rage. But before the Kieran has a chance to retaliate, Boondock tries to defuse the situation by asking if the Kieran can help give proof of Reverend Salt's guilt. Boondock doesn't want to let Reverend Salt get away any more than the Kieran does, and the Kieran senses their earnestness. The Kieran agrees to stand trial, and the party heads to the courthouse. Lucky, the sheriff deputy and Boondock's satyr cousin is pronounced the judge of this trial of Reverend Salt's crimes. Juliet takes initiative by listing off the crimes of Reverend Salt, stating how he killed an innocent person. Reverend Salt tries to protest, saying that person that he killed was a known bandit associated with the Hydra gang. Juliet then yells out an "Objection!" before stating that while she was in the bar, she saw that the man had no tattoo on his hand, so he couldn't be a member of the Hydra gang. The Kieran uses his magic in order to determine who is telling the truth and announces that the Inari woman speaks the truth about the victim, looking at Juliet as he says Inari. Juliet is nervous because the Kieran seems to know information about her that she hasn't told others. But there isn't time for the party to dwell on it, as Lucky decides to, just for his records, ask if the Kieran has any proof that he's a god. The Kieran slowly turns towards Lucky, and in a single swipe, levels the wall behind him. Boondock, unfazed by this, tells Lucky, "Well, that's proof if I've ever seen it. Should we call a verdict?" Lucky, still shaken, agrees and proclaims Reverend Salt guilty, banging his gavel. After Reverend Salt was proclaimed guilty and the punishment was death, the Kieran took no hesitation in killing Reverend Salt. After all is said and done, the Kieran allows Essen to transform back to his own body, as the party breathes out a collective sigh of relief. If you enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, which are linked in the description. If you like our content, please consider supporting us on Patreon, also linked in the description.